on Bay Street, so we're going to create one way this way, one way this way. That didn't work in the 70s. It doesn't work today. Everywhere we went here, we were like, are we going the right way? Is this going to be one way? Are we? And it's a frustrating experience. And by the way, if you want visitors coming in Queen Street, do they know they have to go all the way down Bay or another street and then turn around and come back to enjoy Queen Street? They're not going to do it. And so just do it. And by the way, you don't have angle-in parking, so it's not going to be that horribly expensive to do. Yes, you have to re-sign things. You have to stripe the streets. There are some things you have to do. Just do it. Just get it done. Go back to the way it used to be when you were a thriving downtown. So, re-energizing. Downtown should be priority number one. Here it is. The heart and soul of any community besides its people is its downtown. Period. And by the way, if you don't hang out in your downtown, neither will visitors. We go where you go. So until you activate downtown, we're steering clear. And by the way, downtowns are back and more important than ever before. But here's the future of downtowns. Downtowns are where we go after work and on weekends. The peak hours for downtown are 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. You're never going to have shopping downtown again. You're never going to outdo Amazon. Those days are over. This is the future of downtowns. It's where you go after work on a weekend, and yet you roll up your sidewalks. And you wonder why some of your best restaurants are way up out of town, up on 17. You know, this is the future of downtown, sidewalk cafes, these kinds of things. And so as a city, in economic development, tourism, and community development, there's absolutely, positively nothing that's more important than your downtown, period. But here's the deal. It's what's in the buildings that makes you a draw. You could spend all day long, every day, making downtown stunningly beautiful, and it could still be dead as a doornail. Think of your downtown. Think of Queen Street as Carnegie Hall or a beautiful theater somewhere. Carnegie Hall, beautiful frescoes, chandeliers, velvet-covered seats, just amazing. But would you even go to Carnegie Hall if there's nothing happening on the stage? It's what's in the buildings. So there's a set of videos. I know a lot of you are already watching these. And by the way, 250 days a year, that's going to come up here in a minute. These are these are all in our video library. You've been watching a lot of these. So what do? The very first thing is activate your millennials. Very first thing. So the millennials. How many of you were born between 1980 and 1999? Raise your hands. You should be in charge of this downtown. So let me go on. Millennials are the biggest generation in North American history. By the way, they are also the best educated generation in Canadian history. And by 2020, they will have the most spending power. And by the way, they're the most diverse generation in history. And they're the most civically minded generation in history. There are more mayors in Canada and the US under 35 today than ever before in North American history. Us boomers were down with the establishment. This group is civically minded. I think you have a couple of young people on your council. I'm so glad. Because, and no offense to everybody else, but the days of the good old boy network are coming to a close. This is where you hand over the reins to the future. Now, when I turned 16, I got my driver's license that day. Millennials, 70% get a driver's license, and most well into their 20s, and you're forcing them to go to Toronto and other places. They want the pedestrian experience. But they also want good schools, safe neighborhoods, some jobs, and affordability. And by the way, they all generations, boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials, they all want to decompress in a pedestrian-friendly, intimate setting, your downtown. Sidewalk cafes, things like that. I'll give you one example. This is Erwin, Tennessee, population 6,000. Its claim to fame was in 1916, Mary the circus elephant died there. 100 years later, that's still what they're known for. And so in 2015, they lost a major employer. The mayor went out and he asked the millennials, says, why aren't you living here? He went to high school seniors and said, why aren't you living here? They had a high school 10-year reunion. He went to them and said, why don't you live here? And they gave him all the reasons. So he created a millennial working group. Started with 5 to 6 in the group. It's now 40. For you, I would absolutely, do you have a young professionals group in Sault Ste. Marie? You do. Is it active? Do you have a seat at the table with the city? You should. See what I mean? So, what they did is the mayor said, whatever it takes to get you to want to live here, we'll do it as long as it's legal and we can afford it. And so he turned them loose. They bring things to him. The first thing they did was an elephant revival festival. And they actually created an elephant sanctuary out in the countryside. And then, they do weekly farmers markets. The restaurants can now sell liquor. It was a dry town. I mean, they updated their zoning to allow upper level residential and business and residential mix, for technology and those kinds of things. They put condos in dilapidated buildings. They have 9 new businesses. Remember, this is just in the last 2 years. 9 new businesses opened in their downtown. And the president of the Millennium Group now is the communications director for the city. I mean, everything they're doing. They have a brewery on the drawing boards. I think it just opened. They've got developers are coming. I mean, festivals are a big draw. It changed everything. So, we looked at downtown, primarily Dennis to Pym on Queen Street. That seemed to be kind of the core area. But we also looked at Bay, Albert, Wellington streets. And, we think it's beautiful architecture and, just tremendous potential. And we walked Queen Street 2 or 3 times, the whole thing. It's about, 1.5 clicks long. And, it had the museum at one end. I thought it was cool at the museum that they actually cross-sold to other museums. I thought that was really cool. And by the way, we did go in the museum. And went through it, and I was glad that it just wasn't full of collections of stuff. It actually told the history of Sault Ste. Marie. The one thing I would do is they have massive little photos everywhere. Just way too many. A lot of them are so faded out, I have a better idea. I would rather have you use this is the Orphan Train Museum in Concordia, Kansas. But they use one big photo and nice text so that you can read it. You don't have to walk up to it like this. And you can read it. I just thought that what they did here, I'd rather see you use a couple of bigger, larger photos and then some text rather than just put all kinds of little text and so many pictures that you just miss most of them. And then, change them out. Every few months, just change them out. That'd be way better. But once again, we added it to the best of. It's really great. Now with this, I thought you should do the tower there. We even heard from locals, there was a debate, do we tear it down, do we save it? It was and you're going to save it. I think it's pretty cool. I think you do some fun things. Just, what trompe-l'oeil is, right? Come on, you took French in school, didn't you? It's fool the eye. These are murals that fool the eye. The first thing I thought of is trompe-l'oeil. Now, this building is all concrete wall. All that arch is painted on. So there it is being painted on. There's our guy, he's painting it. And there is what it looked like when it was done. That's a flat wall. That's trompe-l'oeil. Or how about this wall? There's before, there's kind of during, there's after. All painted on. Or how about this one? There's a big long wall like the side of a mall. Hint, hint. And then that's it afterwards. Pretty cool, huh? By the way, if you want to get up close, it's hard to tell, but even these guys standing right there are part of the mural. That's trompe-l'oeil. Or, go ahead. Standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona, it's such a fine sight to see. There's a girl, my Lord, in a flatbed Ford slowing down to take a look at me. The Eagles, take it easy. Notice we have a couple up there making out in the window, and there's homage to the Eagles. And you know what? 1.5 million people a year stop and take their picture on this corner. That used to be a furniture store. You see the reflection in the windows? Well, guess what? The furniture store fell down a long time ago. That's the wall right there. Sorry it's not showing up there. But with this, I thought, man, number one thing I would do is I would probably do some different colors on these. Just to, you know what? One thing that just drives me nuts here in in the Sioux is that why does everything have to be brown, beige, and gray? You're so dreary. Stop it already. But I thought, wouldn't it be cool you could do this? Wouldn't it be cool in between if you did trompe-l'oeil of Spider-Man climbing the wall? Wouldn't it be cool if you had people painted on rappelling down some other ones? You could even take one of these internal, I could see Rapunzel with her golden hair all the way down and a guy painted on looking up at Rapunzel. I mean, have some fun in this town. And you know what? If you did that, that would be so photographic. I'm sure there's going to be objectionists to say, it's historic, it needs to be what it is, on and on. I think you need to have some fun. I think you need to loosen up, Sault Ste. Marie. And so Esser Center looked great. I just think it'd be an awesome icon. That and the pavilion would be two really cool icons. Because when we see stuff like that, I love it. I thought that was so cool. You know, the way you paint utility boxes. You know, it's cool. And we worked in Old Strathcona, which is in Edmonton. I don't know if anybody went to the University of Edmonton. They call it White Avenue, W-H-Y-T-E. They even decorated their trash cans. And you know what they wrote on the side of the trash cans? White trash. W-H-Y-T-E. And then down below says, dump your bigotry here. I mean, it was just really cool. But I think you could do some fun stuff. This here, I thought was really cool. I was sad to see that the building on the other side doesn't want us to paint the building, so we do that. Well, graffiti artists like, really? That's it? We get a little square? But I thought what you could do is copy Rapid City, South Dakota. They created Art Alley, which is now such a huge tourist attraction that they actually do tours of it. And you know what? They let them paint the dumpsters. They let them paint the walls. They paint the telephone poles. They paint the streets. They paint everything there. It is just really cool. There's Jordan and Ashley. They work with us. And so, I mean, some of the art is amazing. And here's their rules. No swastikas, no profanities, and no indecent art, and respect other people's art. That's it. That's the rules. They let them have at it. And by the way, the property owners are thrilled. The more layers of paint you have, the more your building is saved. I mean, they've done some, look at all the trash septos, telephone poles, everything. And it is amazing what it has done. Oh, you got a dream. Loosen up. We did eat at Solo Trattoria, really great restaurant. Absolutely one of our favorites. But here I go, and you know what? You've got this 1970 kind of stucco aggregate. There's probably some really gorgeous brick under that. There's not one single pot. The only landscaping are weeds right down there. I mean, it's like, really, what is with you guys? Inside, it's fabulous. And we added it to the list. I had to start another column. We also ate here at, how do you pronounce it? Muyo's? Okay, we also ate at Muyo's. Great little restaurant. I'm not sure it really fit in our best of category. But then we thought, okay, what do? We need to program some activity spaces. And so I saw this. And I thought, this is a cool little space, but it's not activated. You can create spaces, but they're just empty spaces. And maybe it will be activated. But you know what that reminded me of? This is Park the Plaza. This is in Long Beach, California, in one of the neighborhoods where they took some parking spaces, they painted them all yellow. They went out, and they did this with like $3,000. They got yellow chairs, yellow umbrellas. They painted this parking space. But what they did is they made sure there's food trucks at both ends. And then every day at lunch, they'd bring in a speaker, a comedian, just somebody, a guitar player. And they do that year round. And it works. Now, granted, this is California, but even if you have to put a tent over it, you know, when you don't have inclement weather, you have this space, which is really pretty. I don't know if it's ever activated. You've got another little space right here. Is it ever activated? You know, I keep going back. This is White Avenue. This is White Avenue in Edmonton, part of Old Strathcona. And they have 70,000 in that district. So it's very similar to your population. Right in the middle of their downtown, they have a hotel. You have an old hotel in your downtown, their hotel runs at 94% occupancy year round, and you pay several $100s a night to stay in it. You have that same potential. But right across the street, I took this from one of the hotel rooms. That used to be a gas station. These buildings are going to be redeveloped right up on this plaza, same with that one. And this gas station is going to be a plaza. And it is going to, there it is from ground level. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see. But if this used to be an old post office. It's now called Chianti's. It's an Italian restaurant. Here's a Borders Books. And if you were to look across from Borders Books, that's what's going to go in that space. Your downtown should be home to a piazza, a plaza. Every city in Europe, almost every city in Europe has a piazza. And by the way, plazas are monetized. There's restaurants on 2 to 3 sides. And so they're always, so there you can see there's a splash pad. In the winter that can turn into ice. You can just see, you create a place for people to hang out. If I was having a splash pad, I'd have it right in the middle of downtown. I mean, you can shut off the splash pad, that all becomes ice. Or it's all flush mounted. You can fill it full of tables and chairs, do the Taste of Sault Ste Marie, all kinds of events, public markets, all those kinds of things. But I want to show you one. This is Rapid City, South Dakota. The reason I want to show you this one, they have the same exact population like you, and their challenge is how to increase tourism spending. They have the same population. They have no major cities. They're like you are. It's about 3.5 hours to Sudbury Drive. That's how far they are to Billings, Montana, the next big city. So very similar to you. But in their downtown, they have the same kind of problem with main streets. And there's the site. We said, we want you to put a plaza right there. As a matter of fact, that's a 65-space parking lot. That building in the background is Sears. It was empty. Pigeons were living in it. I told them, tear down the Sears building and build a 2-acre plaza. This parking lot's about 1 acre. I got a call from a guy named Ray Hillebrand, and he said, Roger, we're not tearing down that Sears building because I just bought it. I'm going to fill it full of restaurants, but I also gave the city $2 million to build a plaza right next to my new building. So there it is, 65-space parking lot. There it is under construction. This is that Sears building. And then he actually owns this over here, but that's where it's going to be. And there it is before. And there it is when it opened. On Sunday at 10 a.m., it's packed. And Rapid City has weather like you have. I mean, it's inclement in the winter. And I mean, you know, and there's that Sears building on the right. It's all full of restaurants. This changed everything in Rapid City. You know, you can see they fenced off that little part for beer garden. It's all interchangeable. You can see some of the restaurants in the Sears building there. There's the stage off to the left. This thing is just 1 acre, and it's just monetized. It's active 300 days a year. So this Sunday morning, see, there's a police with dogs. They're showing the dogs how the dogs are trained and everything. All of a sudden, car shows started coming, motorcycles started coming, quilt guilds started coming. Everybody wanted to host their events in Rapid City because they had Main Street Square. You can see there's a splash pad. See that right there in the foreground? There it is when it's turned off. There it is when it's going. And you know what? That splash pad runs 120 days a year. And in the winter, that runs 120 days a year. Right there's 240 days worth of activity in their downtown. Right there. That's 8,000 square feet, so it's not a hockey rink. But once again, the cool thing is, within 24 months of them developing this plaza, the average age of a person buying a home dropped 12 years. The young people are coming back. And they were starting their own businesses in technology and other things. I love this. You can't hardly see it, but that's a movie night on Main Street Square. Somebody posted this. And it says, I grew up in Rapid City. It was never as cool as it is now. They do movies on the square every Monday night. The average attendance is 3,500. That's what you need. So, there were people complained about it. We're going to lose the parking. You're going to kill our business if we lose the parking, which is absolutely wrong. But I said, make me a list of the 25 merchants who complained the most about the plaza. So they gave me a list. I went into all 25, and in 14 of them, I met the owner. And in all 14, they said it was the best thing Rapid City has ever done. I mean, you know, there's no retail vacancies. How would you like that on Queen Street? Lower turnover. Businesses are open later in the evening. They keep breaking sales records, and the average age is dropping. It's a great place for conferences, conventions, and stuff. I mean, even this. Listen, look, you want to go to Waterloo? You know, this is in front of a Shoppers Drug Mart. I mean, they went from that to that. And in the winter, that's an ice rink. Shoppers Drug Mart at first said, you could take away that parking, you could kill our business. Their business went up 300% because it was worth walking to. I mean, you know, another thing you have to do is you have to organize the business mix. It seems to me that most of Queen Street has become a social service agency. I mean, we find everything like drug rehabilitation labs. It looks like it's all full of social services and not really any reason for anybody to go there other than a few restaurants. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have social services, but could we combine them at one end? You know, kind of get them to group together a little bit and then maybe even share buildings and then start bringing it as a place we go to hang out. We don't hang out in the evening in social service businesses or agencies. And so we need a couple of blocks. In these couple of blocks, 3, 2, you can even do it in 2, you need 10 places that sell food. If we went from Dennis Street all the way to Pym, we just barely make 10, and that's like, I don't know how many blocks, 10, 12, 14. We need them more concentrated. I mean, how about 10 destination retail shops? That's the second 10. And then there's all the things that might be in that. And the third 10 is out of those 20, at least 10 open after 6. That's the key thing. So there's the 10-10-10 rule. So they need to have consistent hours and days. They need to be open late into the evenings. They need to have like business group together. You will never go to a successful mall and find methadone clinics and pregnancy clinics and attorneys' offices and everything. And I'm not saying none of those can work downtown, but you need to have your like businesses grouped together. And you need to have your anchor tenants, those ones that make you worth the trip. And it's a central gathering place. So, you know, remember the days we had corner gas stations, you know, on all 4 corners? Or we have fast food, we have Tim's and McDonald's and Jack in the Box and Wendy's. I mean, that's all critical mass. Just like in the mall, the food court. No wonder it's always packed. You got the most concentration. Granted, it's fast food, but you got the most concentration. So sometimes you have to orchestrate the effort. You have to work with property owners. Most downtown associations spend almost all their time, I'm not saying yours, but most spend almost all their time dealing with tenants and never looking at the long game of what do we want this to be when we grow up. You know, I'm going to give you a good example. Halifax's Argyle Street. Does anybody know Argyle Street in Halifax? Yay! You know how cool it is, right? Population 300,000, that's the entire city. Claim to fame on Argyle Street, lots of vacancies, hodgepodge mix. Now, and I'm going to explain this to you, is if I go back to this, I don't know where my challenge was here. Here's the problem. Argyle Street is like 3 huge blocks up from the waterfront in Halifax, and these are steep, steep blocks. Halifax spent tens of millions of dollars redoing their waterfront. Why wouldn't you want to spend your money on the waterfront, right? As a matter of fact, they plan to build a $400 million mixed-use convention center on the waterfront. Meanwhile, you go up that steep hill, and you go up there, and at the time, there was, here, let me go, there we go. There was a little restaurant down the end called Opa, a Greek restaurant. Across the street is a Subway. The owner of that little restaurant said, you know what? I want to turn this into Restaurant Row. It's 2.5 blocks long. So he would go to property owners and say, and most of them were vacant, by the way, about half of them were vacant. He would go to them and say, you know what? If I bring you a restaurant, would you give them a good deal? I need to give them a really good deal for a couple of years so I can get more and more restaurants here. This is a guy who has a restaurant. He's trying to get competitors. So you know what he did then? He went to the city and said, city, our sidewalks are so narrow. We need outdoor cafes. Would it be okay if we lost the parking so that we could do these little route people around during the, between snow seasons, so in like May through October, so we want to lose all the parking. The city didn't put up big fights. He said, if you want to lose the parking, it's $1 per parking space for the whole season. And you have to understand, people have to either park up at the top of the hill and walk down, or if they're parked at the bottom and walk up. You're going to lose all that parking. They said, we're good with that. So they homemade did all of these. By the way, they all put them in warehouses in the winter, so you can see what they did. Very homemade. But you know what? It worked. In 2.5 blocks, there are 22 restaurants. You know what? If you had 22 restaurants in 2.5 blocks of Queen Street, you'd have people coming here from Alpena, everywhere. You'd have them coming here from Mackinac City, Island. You'd have them coming from everywhere, and it worked. Pretty homemade, and it started to spread, and it just became the place where people hang out. It even went down to one of my favorite restaurants, Five Fishermen, down to the city said, that works so well, we're going to allow other restaurants to use sidewalks to do this. And you know what? There's how steep it is. Look at this restaurant. They had to create these platforms going down. And it worked. So you know what? That $400 million mixed-use convention center, office, everything, hotel, that was supposed to be on the waterfront, they built it on Argyle Street. It is one of the coolest places in Canada. And you know what's really cool about it now? Even the street is painted in Argyle. There's no reason why you can't do that on Queen Street in Sault Ste Marie. It took a while. They had to wait for leases to expire. They had to convince property owners to do it. But I would say that is pretty darn cool. And by the way, I've heard people complaining about your bull bouts. The narrower the street, the more successful downtown will be. When you go back to 2 lanes, I would have 1 lane each direction. I would put trees down the middle of the street. The more intimate you make it, the more successful it will be. So, look at this. 22 restaurants in 2.5 blocks, a major gathering spot rivaling the waterfront. It is the 3rd place. First place is where we live, it's our home. Second place is where we work. This is where we go to hang out. You really don't have it. You have a beautiful waterfront, but it's not a hangout place. It's a place to go walk, fitness, enjoy the views. This creates that. And the restaurant, by the way, I went back to the guy, Opa. I said, you know, you just recruited 21 competitors. How's that working for you? You know what he said? Well, Roger, I own 4 of them. And my OPA's doing 10 times the business it ever did before. That is the power of a great downtown. And that convention center, it is open now. You got to activate the street. You know, I love this. This is Outspoken Brewery, right? Did it just open? The patio just opened? Because we couldn't find much about it on TripAdvisor or anything. But I'm so glad to see a patio. But I went to places like this. Why? Why is there nothing? There's nothing there. I mean, you have to have open sign twice because otherwise we don't know what's open and what's closed in your downtown. I mean, I would do patio cafe dining there, and there's a way to do that where you have narrow side. This one, Arturo, I mean, it's rated like number 1. I think it is in business, isn't it? How would anybody know? There's not a shred of, and by the way, look at how wide the sidewalk is. They can put a ton of tables and chairs and umbrellas out there. Why aren't they doing it? You know, this is Canmore, a town of 10,000. Canmore. You know, I mean, look at that. It's got little sidewalk cafes everywhere. Look at, there's a little row of tables right there. I could just keep going on and on. This little ice cream shop, they put out 2 tables and chairs. And they said every time somebody sits out there eating ice cream, there's a line out our door. I mean, just this is all Canmore. A town of 10,000 can do it. There's no reason why you can't when you serve a population of 125,000. You know, I just go, wow. And by the way, it doesn't have to be expensive. This is just rope. This was in Salem, Massachusetts. Those flowers are silk. I don't know why they're doing. In Nelson, British Columbia, they were taking these down in October because the sidewalks are narrow. They let them take parking space so that they could dine out there. I mean, how cool is that? You know what? This is Wolfville, Nova Scotia. How cool is that? So they do all the dining right there on the sidewalk, and then the pedestrians walk around it. And it's really a cool little downtown. There's no reason you can't do that here. So where the sidewalks are narrow, do this. You need to, whatever it takes to get your businesses to do this. Now, we're working in Barrie. Barrie called us and said, you know, Roger, we have a real problem. I said, what's that? We have too many bars in our downtown. It's Dunlop Street. Dunlop Street in Barrie is about the same length as Queen Street, from Dennis to Pym. And they said, and so I walked up and down, and by the way, they're always in the news. In Toronto, what they see is there's another bar fight in Barrie. And so I walked up and down Dunlop Street, and I said, you only have 6 bars. And they said, I know, that's way too many. I go, no, it's not. The problem is you don't have enough of the other stuff. So they stand out. Just like for you, you have all these social service agencies, nothing else stands out. And the restaurants do nothing to encourage people to walk in their doors. And so I said, what you need to do is encourage your restaurants to do outdoor cafes, just like that. You know, route the pedestrians around your sidewalk. You know what they said? The city doesn't allow it. And a guy named Rich that worked for the city said, Roger, we do allow it. After the meeting, the guy that owns this, British Arms, came up to me and says, Roger, the city says they allow it. I dare you to try to go get a permit. I walked into City Hall, into the planning department. You know, I kind of disguised myself so they didn't recognize you from a workshop or something. I walked in the planning department and said, yeah, I'm from the British Arms, and we want to put a sidewalk cafe out there. And the person behind the counter says, well, it'll take you about 14 months, cost about, $10,000 to $12,000 for all your architectural renderings. And do you want me to print out for $3? I'll print out all the codes. I mean, it's the same thing as saying, don't even bother. I went to one city council meeting, and in that council meeting, in 10 minutes, we changed it. If you want a sidewalk cafe, they created 1 page of rules, Has to be removed for snow removal. It has to allow for drainage to go through it. It has to have reflectors on it. It had to have, they just did a page of rules. It could be a pencil drawing napkin on a napkin. It had to be level for disability access. And they said, and you can get a permit in 5 days, $250. And within 1 year, they had 14 restaurants with outdoor cafe dining. And guess what? Nobody ever heard about Bars and Berry again. And now it's one of the coolest downtowns in southern Ontario. I mean, and there it is. You can see, I took this early in the morning. You can see where pedestrians wrap around it. I mean, it's got beautification. And it's worked everywhere. This is just down the street. Another one, they had to work it around the fire hydrant. It works. I don't know why your restaurants aren't doing it. It just seems so basic. It's like, really? Not even a pot. The other thing is blade signs. Can you tell me what's in any of those businesses? When we're driving down the street or walking down the street, we see signs that are perpendicular to us. I have no idea why I should drive down that block. I have no idea what's in any of those buildings. How about there? Can you tell me what's in any of those? You know, how about here? Can you tell me what's in any of those? All I see is 2-hour parking enforced. How about here? Can you tell me what's in any of those? I mean, you know what? We shouldn't have to walk out into the street to see what's in a building. These are blade signs. Pretty simple. Chocolate, collectibles, train store, restaurant. Those are blade signs. You know, this is Nantucket. Those are blade signs. They don't all have to be cookie cutter, but notice they're fairly consistent in height and size. Carmel, California. Those are blade signs. And Canmore. Keep going back to Canmore. I think Canmore is the best town in Alberta. You know, and just once again, great blade signs all the way down this row. So blade signs, just like that. Not expensive. And there's even some height for you. You know what? And when you have blade signs, there's less need to do sandwich boards. You know? And so, by the way, that's a great shop. And they put a table and chairs. I wish there were some pots out there. And by the way, this is the only place we could find on Queen that actually had blade signs. They're kind of blasted out by the parking warnings, but once again, there's a few blade signs there. Now, one of the challenges, I have no idea what the other guy's is. Your sign should always tell us what it is. We have Golden Child Kitchen. I don't know. It says Whole Food. I don't know if it's a bakery, a coffee shop, a restaurant, or a kitchen goods store. It needs to be really clear, okay? Or the same here with Jasmine. I don't know whether Jasmine is an Indian restaurant. If you look at the windows, it says, I think they are like women's activewear. But how would you know it at first glance? And once again, no blade signs. The next one is making it beautiful. And I already gave you this. 70% comes from curb appeal. Your merchants need to extend window displays to exterior spaces. They should always have a couple of feet, enough for a bench with pots, and then a couple of feet that they could, every morning, this merchant brings these things out, every morning. I mean, why don't your restaurants do that? I took that in Banff. It's like $300. It's got the menu on it. I mean, this is Canmore. I'm going to keep coming back to Canmore. I could have done Stratford, Niagara-on-the-Lake, or a bunch of ones here, but once again, every morning this merchant puts that out there. It says we're open, we're in business, we're welcoming. All these are in Canmore. I mean, this is Laverne, Minnesota. So is that. So your business is downtown. Look at this. Extension window displays, blade signs, benches, facade improvements, window displays, sidewalk dining. This is down in Wisconsin, a little town called Neenah, population 5,000. That's before, you ready? That's after. Sales went up 30%. So once again, before, after. Huge. So, look at that. pots every 2 meters. You know what? This is Fredericksburg, Texas. You know what they did? They went to a nursery in October and said, we'll take all the pots you have, 21 inches or bigger opening. So they want bigger pots. We don't care whether they're cracked, chipped, whether they match. We just want pots. Sell them to us for less, just to get rid of them. So they went there. First of all, they went up and down the street and they asked for a hand. They said, we just want to beautify this. And they said, so just give us what you can afford. Somebody said, well, here's $10. Somebody gave them $20. Somebody gave them $200. I think the average donation was like $40. They raised a couple $1,000, got those pots. They brought them back, put them on a side street, and said, merchants, grab them. They didn't say you only paid $5, you only get one. They just said, go grab them. So, of course, this merchant grabbed these right here. This merchant grabbed these right up here. I mean, different merchants grabbed it. They set them all out. That merchant grabbed those two. Then they took a load of topsoil, dumped in a side street, a load of gravel, and some landscape fabric, and they went to kids, youth groups that were trying to raise money, band, cheerleaders, scouts, you name it. And they said, would you help us pot these? Why don't you put gravel in there, layer of landscape, and then fill them full of topsoil. And they paid them a few $100 to do that. They did it in a weekend. And you know what? They've never had a case of vandalism because kids protect things they take ownership of. Pretty cool. And then it was winter. They filled them full of pinwheels. It made the national news, all these pinwheels. You could see it from like a mile away. And then in the spring, they plant them mainly with perennials and evergreens. They had some pots left over. Look at that. Blade sign, art gallery. Look at the pots. Does it make you want to go in? Yeah, darn straight. I mean, look at that. And then, by the way, look at this picture. What do you see? Remember what I said? Women account for 80% of all spending? Look who's sitting on the benches. The guys. That was not staged. Some of you guys are going, oh, been there, done that. So here's the scoop. Think benches. Remember I showed you those pictures of the houses, those really nice houses? It's the same thing with retail. Benches should, here's Jane being my model. Benches should be at the facade, flanked with pots facing out. Always. It makes your business seem welcome. And it tells us you're in business. And by the way, I do not want to hear the winter excuse. Because this is in Port Elgin in the middle of the winter. And it's still gorgeous. Matter of fact, we assessed Wellington County just this last December, and this is in the little town of Erwin. It's gorgeous in the middle of December. It works even in the winter. And these are all dried boughs, most of them. I mean, this is in Erwin. You can go over to Elora. Some of the best towns in Ontario, they're smaller towns, but this is what their merchants do. I mean, this is pretty incredible. It's all dried boughs. It's all holidays. I mean, go to St. Jacobs. I mean, look at this. Niagara on the Lake, St. Jacobs, Erwin, Elora. No reason you can't do it. St. Jacobs. I mean, this is Elora in December. And then, does this look like a great place to hang out? It's Queen Street. It's as stark and bare as I have ever seen. And it's June. Maybe they're saying, hey, Roger, we're waiting for July because we're only open July and August. I don't know. But I think it's a shame. You have beautiful architecture. I mean, we ate over at Gliss, but I got to tell you, when we walked up, we did not want to go in. It's just zero curb appeal. And I just don't think, this is the Bank of Montreal should be ashamed. This is me shaming people now. You got pots out there, just weeds growing in them, and cigarette butts. Well, the cigarette butts aren't growing, but they are molding into place. And even the metal thing is all rusted. What happens is, I'm sure all these bank employees walk in the back door. I don't know when the last time they ever walked out in front. I mean, that's one side. This is the other side. It's all full of weeds. I don't know how to express this enough. Even when it comes to fixing stuff down there, like this is all mud is run out over the sidewalk. You know, this is right down on Queen Street. Another thing you have is you have sidewalks and then you put paver stones down, but the paver stones have sunk. So if you're walking there, you're like this. You know, if you have somebody walking next to you. Well, raise those, over time, raise those so that they're level, so that somebody with a stroller or somebody doesn't trip. I mean, I don't know. I took a bunch of these, but this is all full of cigarette butts and leaves and everything. I don't think it doesn't look like it's been cleaned in 6 or 8 months. And it's not the only place. And by the way, one thing you need to know is a lot of times I'll have merchants come up and they'll see city. It's the city's responsibility. The city owns the sidewalk. The city owns the curb. You know what? When I hear businesses say that, I say, whoa, whoa. You go to Paris, you go to any city in Italy, Europe, you know what? The merchants are out there hosing off and cleaning off their sidewalks every single morning. It has to be a public-private partnership. So when people always cast stones, you know what I see on Queen Street? Except for 2 blocks, I see a ton of apathy. That's sad. So I just went, even all over town I see where trees have been chopped up and we just chop them off and leave them. I mean, either replant it or get rid of the planter. I even thought, I would go get grade school kids and I have them paint all the way around all of these. Paint little pictures, murals, whatever. Where's Waldo? Something. Bring downtown to life. It doesn't have to be brown, beige, and gray. You know, things like that, I just go, really? I mean, I know cars bump them and they move out, but you know, maybe once a year go out and straighten them. You know, I mean, it's just rampant. And I want to talk about parking. Here's the scoop. First of all, it should be free on nights and weekends, which I think it is. Those are the most important hours. In this case, this is in Greenville, South Carolina. Even the bank will even pay for parking during the day sometimes. And so that should be good. And by the way, any money generated from parking meters should not be considered general fund revenues. It should be reinvested back into the district where the parking meters got the money. That is economic development. I mean, it is the same as with your, let's see, parking is just like parks. You don't charge people to go into your parks. If you charge people for parking, which by the way is fine as long as it's worth it. I went online and I found some parking study that said we're going to charge $1.25 an hour. Wrong. I'm going to tell you how to do that. And that says we're going to raise the rate every year by 10%. So in 5 years, you're going to raise your parking by 50%. You haven't even given me a reason to go downtown yet. I think you're jumping the gun. Stop it already. And so, number one, in a great downtown, the average person will spend 4 hours. Shopping, dining and movie. I mean, you name it. So 2 hours dramatically reduces spending and repeat visits. So here's the point. We cannot get our merchants to park somewhere else. We're going to punish our customers instead. How's that working for you? Yeah. So that's the scoop. If you insist on 2-hour parking, you need to tell me where all-day parking is. So right there, it's 2-hour parking, but it says there's all-day parking this way, and this way. Give people choices. If you want to charge for parking, which I think is totally fine, you should. I would do $1 an hour up to a max of $3. They did this in Walnut Creek, California. You know what happened is? People would pay $3 and say, we might as well stay longer because now it's free. You know when they're staying longer, you know what they're doing? They're spending more money. $1 an hour up to $3 after that is free. That's what I would do. Okay? I mean, that's what they do in this is White Ave in Old Strathcona. By the way, the parking here is 2 to 3 blocks away. You know when I said about sidewalk cafes, get rid of parking, you know what? Merchants say, you take away the parking, you're going to kill my business. Here's your response. Are you telling me your business isn't worth walking 2 blocks for? Shuts them up just like that. Let me give you another stat. The average shopper at Walmart parks, and sorry I speak in feet and inches, The average customer parks 140 to 160 feet away from the front door. That's about from me to that glass wall, okay, to the door back there. Yet they have no problem walking that far and then all the way to the back of the store, which is about where that next building is, to buy a DVD. They just walk 2 blocks. The only thing with parking, it has to be worth the walk and it has to be worth the price. I would not start jacking up your prices for parking until it's worth paying more for. And so in Old Strathcona, all their parking is 2 or 3 blocks away and the place is packed. It is where Edmonton comes to celebrate. That's their whole brand. It's the life of the Edmonton party. And it's really cool. And they have no problem walking 2 or 3 blocks. So, the other thing I would do is go digital. You have those kiosks, which are fine, but you know what? We're beyond that now. I would go to either Passport or Park Mobile. And I think Park Mobile or Passport, one of those two is actually headquartered in Canada. But even if it's Pay by Phone Canada, I mean, I think Passport is available in all. But by the way, it doesn't cost the city anything. And parking enforcement needs to have web capable. It'll tell you which ones have expired. And then customers pay a convenience fee. So what happens is when I use it, I'll show you in just a second. They provide this, they do everything, it costs you nothing. And the average city that goes this way sees a 20% increase in parking revenues. So what they will do is they will come in and they will take old parking meters and they don't even use the parking meters anymore. They cover up the coin slots, but there it tells, this is Wisconsin Dells. It tells you, here's a QR code, you can pay by phone, and you just snap a QR code, it downloads an app, and then you type in zone 110 space 548. It says, how long do you want to stay? You say, well, 2 hours, if that's max, whatever it is, 2 hours. It says, okay, and they charge me 35-cent convenience. That's how they make their money, 35 cents. It doesn't cost you a dime. But it's worth it because you can use all of these choices. So you can use this, or if you don't have a smartphone, you can walk over to kiosks like what you have. And by the way, you know what's really cool about these? If I say I'm going to do one restaurant, I'm going to go eat at Tandoori, and then what it'll do is send me a text alert that says your parking meters are about to expire in 15 minutes. Do you want me to reload it? So you're warned. You know, if somebody gets a ticket and you're downtown, they write you off. Even though they're the ones who broke the law, they write you off. And so, you know, there's one of the solar panels. And by the way, in this town, look what they did. They just took the meters off. They threw away the meters and just put those on them. So you just get out of your car, you can scan it, or just type in space 8015, and there it is. It took me 15 seconds. I just get out of my car, boom, done, paid, and I can enjoy my time. And I'm alerted. You know, I open the app, zone 110, space 184, 4 hours, $2.35, and I was on my way, done. So, starting to wrap up. Where do you start? I always say somewhere in Queen Street, we need to have 2 blocks. Where would I start? You know what? You can't fix the whole thing. It's a mile long. You know, I just say, let's go find a place. So we walked up and down, and we loved Pym to East Street. Yeah. The merchants in these 2 blocks were the ones that had the most beautification. They're the ones that seemed to care. I'm sorry, it's only 2 blocks, but the whole rest of it, they didn't seem to care. That's the impression we got. I'm sure I'm wrong, but that's the impression you get. You know, first of all, beautiful architecture. Look at Homespun Treasures. Beautiful outdoor displays. I mean, we're still lacking blade signs, but that's easy to fix. You know, and by the way, right here, I would widen this sidewalk out to 6 meters. That's like 20 feet. I'd widen the sidewalk way out. I'd have 1 lane each way. No more 3 or 4 lanes in your downtown Queen Street. The narrower the street, you know, right now, Queen Street is how you blow out of town if you're coming down the waterfront by the old hospital. I think that needs to end. Doing 2-way streets will help. but 1 lane each way plus wider sidewalks. You know, I even thought, there you go. Look what's in there. We got Stonehouse Wine, City Meat Market, Elliott's Ice Cream. We don't have enough of the 10-10-10 yet. But I even say, why don't you call this just Uptown Queen Street? It's uptown. It's Queen Street. Just don't do more studies. Do something. Give it a little name. And then you got Paint and Decor Concepts. You got a tattoo shop, which is fine. You got 2 tattoo shops. Vintage Emporium, Ithaca Activewear. You know, oh, that's Ithaca. That's not, I can't remember what Jasmine was. Okay, so you've got, you know, the special events, Homespun Treasures, the floral shop, Camera Crafts, Stork Bundle. I mean, this is a great little 2 blocks. I just think, start this, make it a showcase. I guarantee you the next block say, when are you going to do us? I'm sorry it's at this end of town. That's my problem. It's too far, but you know what? They're the close to the hospital. That must have been a big blow, but they seem to be the ones that seem to care. And so, great shops. Once again, could use a little more curb appeal, but notice they put out flowers, they put out pots. I mean, you know, they've done a pretty good job. Could it be better? Yeah, no place is ever done. But I just think there's some business that maybe not be a good mix, but here's the floor shop. They got these beautiful pots with like bamboo in there. And by the way, this ice cream shop was open. Can't get ice cream down at the waterfront, but there's also no signs that tell you that Queen Street is just a couple blocks up. From the waterfront, you say Bay Street, and Bay Street is not much to look at, I'm sorry. Got a couple hotels and stuff, but I wonder how many people come and walk your waterfront and don't even know about Queen Street. But once again, great little ice cream shop. I mean, just they put out the chairs, the tables, here the flowers. Look at, that's what you call extension window displays. I don't know why the rest of downtown can't get it. But these are great little shops. I mean, I love that. You know, this is a great shop. You know, I would love to see the best of this little uptown Queen Street district be a best of. You know, even the camera shop, I love seeing camera shops in downtown, talking about the cruise that's coming, join the ride. I think they probably got too much stuff in the windows, but they're really promoting reasons for us to come back. We didn't even know about Stonehouse. Jane walked in there and she goes, oh, you know what they do is they actually will make wine for you. You bring your, I thought it was really a cool thing. You know, plus it's right next to the heritage site. Paint and Decor Concept is a great store. It could use some curb appeal. By the way, I think its sign looks too blocky. It looks like a government sign. I think if you're a home decor, I'd have some different fonts, something to make it look prettier, but still a nice store. And so, see this space? I thought, where do we start with that plaza? So this here, I think, is the, this here is the party store. I can't remember what's on the other side, but see that parking lot? I thought, what if we took that parking lot and put down paver stones? Now, what if in those 2 buildings they became restaurants? They open up the sides and you actually have restaurant or cafe or whatever. Now, I'm not trying to kick businesses out. I'm just saying that if you have a business there, maybe you want to put a little cafe in your store because now we're going to give you a plaza. We're going to give you outdoor dining space. And I thought, so what if we did that? What if we put street trees along Queen Street right there and even along the back? So we just create a nice little place. What if we put, these are like Catalina umbrellas. They're a little bigger around than these tables. What if we put those out there? So you'd have a restaurant that would open up onto that and maybe over there. And what if we put some vendor booths down? Because right now we're making this into kind of a market. Those are all those 10-foot square vendor booths. And you know what? You could take all that stuff out. You could put an ice rink there. You could put in those chess pieces there. You could take out this stuff here and have yoga in the morning or whatever you want. I mean, and by the way, the surfaces should be paver stones. No asphalt, no concrete. Paver stones drain easy. They look nice. Doing that is what you want to do. Plazas can be really simple. This room is a fantastic plaza, and this is pretty plain, right? But you can decorate however you want. Same with that. You just put whatever you want on it. It always changes. You could even get a tent covering. You need 250 days. Well, you know what? I looked at your weather, and you don't really have 250 days of pristine weather. You know, we're from Seattle, we get it. And so maybe you have to have part of it covered. You know, I mean, here's a tent cover. This is in Missoula, Montana. Look at that one. It's more permanent, but it's pretty cool. It does not restrict people coming into their downtown. You know, next to those trees, I'd put like planters all the way around it. Keeps, you know, these days terrorists have a deal about driving into plazas and stuff. This helps restrict that, and it creates just a nice ambience. You know, look at this. I love this plaza. It's a plain space, but you notice all the furnishings? They're wire spools and reels. There's nothing expensive about this. Even sitting on wire spools. This table is a wire spool. We got a stack of pallets there. And then what they did is they just brought in food trucks and all kinds of activity. Simple. The whole deal is programming. Programming. There's food trucks lined up. I mean, here is doing yoga. You might do yoga in the summer in the mornings, or maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays you do Zumba, or maybe you do Tai Chi there. Maybe people even pay $2 or $3. Maybe they buy the mats or rent the mats, and they're doing all these kinds of things. I mean, even just putting one little cool little thing like that in there would be something. You could even do little vendor booths like this. In New York City's Bryant Park, they've got these. And by the way, all of these are made in the next province over, Quebec. So they're Canadian. And by the way, they work in New York City where it's wet. And by the way, every one of these things can be moved around. They're on little pallets. You know, this makes your plaza a business incubator for small businesses. How cool is that? I mean, music. You just bring in music. You got 2 colleges here, or a college and university. In downtown Denver, they put out pianos. They cover them when it rains, and then they have pianos. I mean, imagine doing art markets. And you could close up part of Queen Street. I mean, you could even move your farmers. We always think farmers markets should be where people spend money. Down at the pavilion, they can't spend any money except at the market. And so, you know, even doing Christmas, this is a Christmas house, holiday fairs. I mean, so it's all about programming, home and garden fairs. I mean, the taste of Sault Ste Marie. You can do tailgate parties for hockey games. You know, you put out all the tables and chairs and have people bring their own barbecues. I mean, it's not hard to program spaces. But that's the trick, and make sure it's in the evening hours. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be expensive. Look at this, 4 tables and a chair on Overstock.com for $162. That's not that expensive. Then you go buy umbrellas, $39. And don't tell me about your wind, because sometimes you'll have to have them closed. But we always throw out obstacles why we can't do things. Now, this is, oh boy, is this March Street? Does somebody know right off? That is March Street? I thought, if you can't do it down there, this would be my next candidate. Because I love these little shops over on the right and left. And I thought, man, maybe you could even, like vibe there. And I just thought this could be another cool, you could do both of them. See what I mean? Over time, you know what? Even in New York City, they've shut down 60 miles of traffic lanes to make them pedestrian oriented. They created 60 new plazas. You know what the future is? The future is no cars. Now, I'm not saying you do that. I always say you do that when you have no other choice. But you could start with the one up there between Pym and East, and then maybe do this one. I even thought, man, you could do it so people would still have access into these. I think there's some homes or something right up there, so they still have access. But then this would be kind of your little plaza area. So I just thought that would be kind of cool too. It's a neat little place. You know, when you create little places like this is in New Jersey, it's pedestrian stuff, you're going to bring your downtown back. So, with that, in closing, you have something amazing here. You have all the bones to work with. You have the population to work with. Your downtown, that Queen Street, should be amazing. And it's not. I think, you know what, now one thing I want to say is that we haven't been here before. And I know somebody's going to come and say, Roger, it's a whole lot better than it was 3 years ago. And that's awesome. You may see things here that you're already working on. Great, you've just been validated. But I just think you have the potential. The buildings are there. I think you need to rearrange the business. I used to do that for a living. I would say, okay, you're a social service agency. How about if I give you that space over there? In exchange, you give me your space because I want to put a glass blower there. What you do is you have to rearrange the furniture so it makes sense. It takes a lot of doing. This is why you have to work with property owners, not just local tenants. But it's here. I mean, you've got some little bit like Life's a Stitch. You've got some cool things, but they're all spread out to where you got social service, law firm, and then we've got a restaurant, and then the restaurant has no curb appeal. It's so hodgepodge that it's like whatever. And if you get rid of all the negative signs, that will help a lot too. But it's here. I mean, one thing I love is your downtown. Where's Josh? There he is back there. We walked into the office the other day. We just walked in and crashed them. And I said, cool. I looked at everybody in that room, and they're all millennials. Went, yeah, you're the future. That's cool. So I'm glad. And I just think that, you know what, Josh? I hate to do this to you, but you know what? You should be setting the standard here with beautification. He's over there nodding, see? This is called biting the hand that feeds you. but it's true. I mean, you got to set the standard. And what's that? Yeah, there is. Yeah, so you got that. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. And then, of course, we're conflicting with the parking warning signs. I'm not going to let that one go. But, right next door, they have a beautiful little shop that we hardly notice because there's nothing that pulls our eye. And so this is all doable. And by the way, do you have like a garden club, or who does all the plantings along the waterfront and everywhere? The city, fantastic. And they were just planting these, so I can't even imagine them in a month when this all fills in. I just think your waterfront is so stunning. There you go. Now you know where the ice cream shop is. There's the pavilion, there's the ice cream shop, or former ice cream shop. This city, what people always say, Montreal's the most beautiful city in Canada. You could rival that with a much smaller population. I mean, what you have is spectacular. I think maybe you forget it. I think there's some factory mentality here. We're a mill town, we're steel, and that's who we are. But you know what? Even people that work in that industry want to come home to something other than more steel in industry. I wonder how many people work at the mill whose families don't want to be here, but they're working here because it's a great job and it's a great, and they like it. But I wonder how many people are saying, boy, if this town was just a little bit better, just a little bit better. All you have is one street. If you could do a couple blocks on one street and monetize your waterfront, you'd be an amazing destination. I mean, look at this. I sent this picture to some people, the other people working in our office, and they're going, and all I got was, OMG, where's that? I said, that's Sault Ste. Marie. And they're going, really? They had no idea. Stunning. I mean, what you have is just look at this. And you know what? Simply Breathtaking really sums it up what you got here. It's really awesome. There is 99 suggestions. You could do 80 of them for about $30,000. It's all low-hanging fruit. It's all the crappy signs. It's putting out some pots and planters. It's I know some of it's going to take heavy lifting. Doing a little plaza is a little more expensive. Wayfinding system is not cheap. But you know what? Almost all of these are low-hanging fruit. You don't need any more studies. You don't need any more plans. Just do it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to create an assessment team. This is more than just downtown. This is the whole community. We didn't come here just to do downtown. We looked out there at Kinsman. We went out to the airport. We looked at everything. I think on that assessment team, I'll include the mayor. I'll include your CAO and your deputy CAO. I mean, I would include, and then you have downtown. I would have the Chamber of Commerce there. I would have tourism, economic development. Remember, downtown, Site selectors, you know what they do for economic development? They come into a downtown, and the health of a downtown economically is how they judge the health of the city. When they come downtown Queen Street, what are they thinking? Social services, meth labs, whatever you got. I don't know what it all is, but it's not pretty. And so what I would do, I would hand out signs. I would go there. By the way, this is being filmed. We want it on YouTube. We want it out there. And we're going to give Josh in the next day or so, we're going to give him all this presentation. We're going to save his PDFs. And we want you to go through and say, well, this one we're already working on. This one we want to do. This one here we're going to do something different. These are all just ideas. They're just suggestions. This assessment is a conversation starter, but I wanted to go from conversation to actually implementation, that you actually do something. You know, turn them to recommendations. Go through them. Most of these things can be done by private sector. And finally, I love this quote. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. You can do this. I mean, you already have everything that you need to become one of Canada's best destinations. Thank you so much for coming out this morning. Thank you very, very much. Well, we'll hang around if you want to.